Girl, I want your phone numero. That was a moment from our live album reaction to Drake and Party Next Door's new collab album called Some Sexy Songs for You. If you guys want to catch the entire uncut live album reaction, you guys could do so by hitting the link in the pinned comment. We had a great time with the whole Patreon community, and we're doing those weekly. But let's get into this, Ant. First Drake album since everything happened in 2024. First time we're getting a Drake and PND collab album after years of countless collabs, especially more from the 2010s decade. But now we have a 21-song album, very R&B driven.
Yeah.
Let's get started with the artist performance. What did you make of it, man?
Well, listen, it's not going to be like a Take Care level performance from Drake, and it's not going to be a PND first installment performance from Party Next Door. I didn't expect that to happen. And going into this album, I told you in the live stream before we got into the live album reaction on YouTube that I wasn't expecting like the greatest of performances from both of them. I feel like coming off of For All the Dogs, the R&B cuts off of that album were a bit weaker in my opinion. Listening to PND4 back in 2024, I wasn't the biggest fan of that track list, but I did expect a certain type of chemistry to be established, and I did expect to be quality within this track list because they are frequent collaborators. They do have a really serious catalog of songs together. There are certain duds within it, but for the most part, I'm like, okay, this is an album for Toronto. This is a Valentine's Day album. If there's a place where both of them are going to strive, it's going to be on this type of studio album and experience. And I think they did their thing. I don't think it's revolutionary for either of their catalogs. I don't think it's the strongest of performances within their discography. But at the same time, you are getting solid performances. For example, something like Deeper. I go back to that cut, and the more and more that I listen to it, it's something that could have been like off of the first installment of P&D, for example. Or if I keep going, let's say Crying in Chanel, I know that snippet went viral, and that was kind of like the first snippet or the second one that got previewed for SSS. And I'm not the biggest fan of the first half. I think it's solid. The vocals remind me of like Honestly Nevermind. Let me finish my thought, please. And then you get that fantastic part towards the end. Even something like Nokia, for example. I feel like Drake is really animated throughout it. Excuse me. I feel like the rapping performance is pretty strong towards the end. So it's not necessarily that I have a lot of nitpicks with this track list. It's just like they played it safe for what it is, and that's the way that I feel about the artist performance overall. But I could go into other really weak performances.
I really
on
disagree with
list.
a lot of the takes that you have. I mean, I think ultimately it is a big disappointment. I think it's below par from what you would expect. I don't think that they really performed well, and I think the major reason is that like Drake has been in autopilot mode for the last couple of albums, and this feels just as lazy and uninspired as some of the R&B cuts you'd find on For All the Dogs or Certified Lover Boy or even Honestly Nevermind. And I think the major issue for me as a fan is just Drake's over-reliance on auto-tune lately to a point where, he doesn't need to be doing it because he has a good singing voice, but it seems like a stylistic choice to really, rely on the auto-crooning. And I think that what also weighs this down for me, generally speaking, is the fact that the vocal mixing is pretty dirty. It feels like the vocals are very over compressed, which
better for sure.
results in a lack of like dynamic vocals, in a lack of energy and depth to the inflections.
So let me ask you about this, all right? Because when we had questions about Honestly Nevermind, and we've been debating this for a while, you're not a fan of the vocals off of that project.
For the most part,
I'm okay with them. An example, songs like Sea and Tower or Mothballs, a lot of those vocals do sound similar to certain tracks that you would get off of that track list. So do you feel like it's a product of like you're just not a fan of that type of like Drake like vocal style, or it's like because I just want to know like the feelings you had with Honestly Nevermind are kind of resembling this for you.
I feel like the vocals just sound super artificial and they sound very sleepy, and like I said, they're not very dynamic, they're not full of range. Like you mentioned, Deeper by P&D, that's a huge standout because there's actually a range to P&D's vocals in that song. There's nice tone switch ups, and I think that also has one of the best hooks on the entire album. But going back to like Crying in Chanel, which I was surprised to hear that you like that performance, just because looking at it, he's belting out these sustained notes that really don't sound good. Like for example, when he's holding on to the replay or crazy, it just sounds super artificial. And what's crazy is that snippet that got everyone excited only came in for like the last 40 seconds. So that was another letdown performance-wise. But speaking on some highlights, PND's hook on Mothballs is one of the few moments where I feel like there's genuine emotion that you could feel evoked
That's a
through the
great hook.
vocals.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
was a really standout hook. But then you go to some of the Drake hooks, like for example, I think it was Something About You, where he just repeats the title about a dozen times, and it's just super repetitive and lazy ultimately. So that was not great. But I want to talk about Drake's rapping performances because he
Yeah.
had quite a few of those. What did you make out of like the Brian Steele's and the Gimme a Hugs of the album?
Well, speaking about small town fame, because I think that's one of the first rapping performances that you see on this album. Flows reminded me of something like Away From Home on Fat D, like that quick sort of style. And then after that, I think it was a nice transition into more of like the melodic flow that he hits towards the end of the track. I feel like that's actually a really strong cut off of this project. Speaking about Give Me a Hug, we'll obviously talk about those lyrics within the lyric portion of this review. But I felt like that was another solid rapping performance flow wise. He locked in, he did his thing. It was dynamic and it was energetic for the track list. Something like Brian Steele reminds me of like that 2020 Drake almost, the types of flows that you'd find on something like Dark Lane demo tapes, for example. So I feel like he was borrowing some flows from different albums and different eras that he's been releasing lately, which I'm okay with. I mean, I know what Drake's here to do. I know that he's not in the phase of his career where he's going to give me another Take Care, but a lot of these performances are acceptable to me from like what I'm expecting out of Drake at this point. Talking about more good vocals though, Raining in Houston, I do like those vocals on the first half of the track. I do like them. I think that they're probably the clearest out of the entire album, and that's a cut that I like. And then after that, even the vocals from P&D and both Drake on Die Trying, that's a really good song. Going back to that track, I really like that for the track list. They're very simple, they're smooth. The auto crooning is great. It doesn't necessarily sound like too robotic. It doesn't sound artificial. I really enjoyed that song, especially the passion from both of them within that performance. But speak to me about the rapping, because you asked me about that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I think with "Gimme a Hug," it was definitely one of the more energetic, lively performances, R&B,
Yeah.
rap, or whatever genre. Just in terms of his mic presence, he felt alive on that song, so I appreciated that. Then going on to Small Town Fame, you have Drake rapping with the snappy, Lil Yachty, reminiscent flow, and I actually found that he found a really nice pocket at the start of that song. I really fucked with that. But then going on to Brian Steele, you get some more Lil Yachty-esque rhyme patterns, and I didn't find that cut all that much entertaining.
Like you listen to that and then Desires off of Dark Lane demo tapes, and they play so similarly.
I'm,
So like
I'm,
I don't know.
I'm
I don't
not, I'm
know.
not huge on Desires either.
I
to be
get it though,
honest,
because but like to just say like that's a Lil Yachty flow, I don't think is like the greatest representation of like what that performance is.
but that's what's odd to me, right? Is that it's like we're getting a Drake album, and he doesn't sound inspired by too many artists besides PND himself or Lil Yachty and Ice Spice on Glorious. That is one of the worst performances on this album,
That's a horrible
bro.
performance for
Like,
sure.
how can you be Drake and say, yeah, let me go give a gra ad lib and start rapping with the flow of Ice Spice and then later Central C? Like, it just felt totally pointless and also out of place on the track list as a performance to be rapping over that drill beat. We got to talk about Meet Your Padre though.
Yeah.
In terms of all-time lows, he's doing a Spanish accent and mixing the English and the Spanish in his
Yep.
in his writing, and it must be a parody, bro. That's the only way that I can rationalize him putting this out. Like, there's no other way that he would genuinely think that this was like a good performance. It's
I think,
impossible.
listen, like he's done this before where he's tried to like genre hop and
Like
he tries,
Gently.
exactly, and he's done this before on For All the Dogs. I just think like it worked for the dancehall vibes. It works for R&B. It works for UK drill at certain points, but I just think like the Spanish thing is not working for him. Like for myself, like this is where it feels disingenuous. Like this does not necessarily fit the album. I can understand why he wanted to try it. He's been co-signing Chino Pacas extremely heavily throughout 2024 and even now getting him on the album. But again, like why go play into his world, which I'm going to go speak about in the features. But another performance that I really like on the R&B side of things is actually Greedy. I think that's one of the best songs on this entire fucking track list. I love the way that he closes off the album with these calm, patient, melodic vocals. And it's probably one of the better vocal performances, for me at least, on this entire track list. So
Okay.
I think, listen, overall, it was a good performance. It's standard. I think that there was a lot of room for improvement. For example, songs like Glorious, Meet Your Padre, Spider-Man, Superman, like that weighs down the track list a lot for me. And then there's certain performances where I'm just kind of bleh about it. But there are strong performances, at least in my opinion, throughout this track list. So that's what I'll say about it.
I think that, you have to look at this as a collab album, right? And there's just a real lack of chemistry for me here throughout this project, in the sense that, there's a point within the track list where you're getting 3 solo Drake songs, and it's like Party just dipped the studio, went to go grab a bite, and then came back later for the album. Not only that, but we spoke about how 21 Savage was kind of in the back seat on Her Loss. I feel like that was even more of a thing here, where Party, like on a lot of these songs too, that he's on, right? Because there's 5 solo Drake songs, which I find a lot for a collab album. Even the songs that Party's on, sometimes he'll just be on for a hook, or he'll have like a 20-second feature, and I wasn't too big of a fan of that. Apart from that, I did want to, maybe hope to see some back and forth like singing, which it wasn't something that I really expected, because it is an R&B album, but you do get that on Something About You, where they go line for line, and it's pretty smooth, but it's very short-lived. Apart from that, on a song like Lasers, you'll find them both doing the same Beyonce Say My Name interpolation, and it just felt lazy, it felt uninspired, and it just felt like something that they could just bounce off of each other, but to no real entertaining value. So ultimately, I'm easily going to give this a mid rating for the artist performance. I could have seen myself going to bat, to be honest with you, because I really feel like it's very limited in terms of how many standout performances there are. But Nokia is a fucking, like, that song has hit potential, bro.
Oh,
honestly,
for sure.
That's been the biggest grower for me. It's upbeat, it's catchy.
It gives me Hotline Bling vibes.
Yeah.
It has like that type of word where it's like, I've never heard this before. It's super unique, and like I didn't know if I fucked with it in the first live album reaction. I probably didn't, because we didn't like the entire thing within our first listen. But more and more that we bump it, I really like the production on it. But we'll speak about that later. Let's get into the features. So the features that I have on my list for today that I want to speak about is Pim, Elkin, Chino Pacas, and then after that Thames. Right?
Yeba, you mean?
Yeba.
Yeah, so 4 features.
4 features, excuse me. So Yeba on Die Trying, very minimal towards the end of the track on Die Trying, but I really like her vocals. I think they're really solid.
Really didn't enjoy it. You compare this to like Yeba's Heartbreak, for example, and like for some reason they decided to pitch up her vocals, and it barely sounded like her, and she came in for like a super short outro. I'm like, why is this on the song?
I
Like
think she
at
did
that
a great
point,
job closing off the song.
give Yeba another interlude, or give her a more prominent role. I feel like it was pointless, and I really didn't enjoy the feature. I'm gonna be honest with you.
It's so minimal though. Like I don't know how you like can not fuck
Because they
with it.
changed her vocals. I just told you they pitched
But
up her
it's not-
vocals,
it's
and it
not
didn't
that
even
bad.
sound like Yeba.
No, I could have told it was Yeba.
All right,
Anyways.
let's keep on going. Let's talk about Chino Pacas, who obviously fits on the Mexican dance instrumental of Micher Padre. It's more of his world than Drake's, but kind of just a forgettable feature. Like when I think back to that song,
it's miscuration.
it is. I'm gonna think of Drake doing the fucking Spanish accent. That's all I'm gonna remember from that song.
But you know what? Like this could have been a solid Chino Pacas like solo song.
Maybe
If he would have gotten the entire track himself. I just feel like, again, standard for Chino Pacas, but just didn't fit the track list at the end of the day. Speaking about Elkin on Nokia, also produced the song, which is really cool. I like the cool vocals. I like him on the second switch. I also feel like he adds like a bit more of like an oomph and energy to the track as well. Really fun. So I think it was a solid feature for this track list.
Baby girl.
I like it.
It's
fun.
It's fun.
Smooth.
It's fun. It's playful, and I think that he kind of acts as like just a hype man, and kind of just like making the song have its own vibe
and feel more lively.
Yeah, and listen, it's not like a great feature, but it's cool. It fits really well in the song. But the last one is Pim, who was a relatively unknown artist before this, so it's cool to see them give her some light. I always appreciated that out of Drake, where like he would give these interludes or these moments to artists on albums. So I'm happy that we saw that get brought onto this one. And with Pimmy's interlude, you can really hear her pain and her intense feelings of love through the dynamic inflections, and it does feel like her vocals, could have been mixed a bit better.
Well, it has like the 4 bats of treatment, if that makes sense to you. This sounds like 4 bats could have gone on top of this, and it has that type of vocal mixing. Honestly, I'm a big fan of this interlude too. Like I'm gonna be revisiting this song for sure.
It's the best feature for sure, but ultimately, a lot of these features, like looking at the Pim one, the Chino Pacas, the Yeba, kind of felt pointless to me. I'm gonna give them a mid rating just because the only one that I think really belonged and made sense for a song was Elkan. And the Pim one, again, it was cool. I liked it for what it was, but they could have gone without it, especially on an album with 21 songs. Not necessary.
No, I don't know. I think it's a tradition at this point to have like an unknown artist, come to the track list, give the cosign, and honestly, like it has replay value for me. Like I'm gonna be going back to Pimmy's Dilemma. It's actually a high point on the track list for me. So I think that was a really solid feature. You and I are disagreeing on the Yeba vocals at the end of Die Trying. I really liked them. I liked the way that she closed off the track. So that was a W. Elkin and Nokia spoke about that, gave a lively vibe to the track itself, gave it an extra flavor. I really enjoyed that feature. And then after that, the Chino Pacas feature wasn't horrible. It was standard. Could have been good maybe on a future album of his, but just didn't fit the track list. But overall, they were good features. They were solid. I'm going to give it a good rating. But
Agree to disagree. Next up, we got
the content matter.
The content of the album. And listen, man, with an album title like "Sexy Songs for You," you know exactly what to expect going in.
You know what you're getting. Yeah.
It's gonna be songs about heartbreak, songs about indulging in the moment, casual sex, and just. I would say super relatable topics for a lot of people. I think like that was sort of the aim, was to have topics about, like, for example, debating between spending time with your friends or going out with your girl. Like they really made it, I would say, universal in terms of like the messaging for a lot of people.
Apparently, the only way that you could relate to this content matter is if you're a gigolo. Apparently, that's the word around the office.
Virgins cannot enjoy the album.
Yeah, apparently so. But regardless, though, what I was surprised about with this album is like getting a lot of Drake rapping performances.
Yeah.
I thought that he was just going to be auto-crooning the entire time, but you really think about it. Songs like Give Me a Hug, songs like Brian Steele, these are rapping performances, and I will grade them as such. Like you said, the overall concept on the album, moody R&B, obviously talking about relationships, spending money in the clubs. I'm going to take you from your man's is a waste. You could do better with me. You're going to have a better life.
It's the same shit we've been hearing from both of them.
Of course, it was so standard. Yeah. They've been doing this for album after album, and I think that's just what fans wanted for this type of project. Not me. I don't blame them for... I know, not you.
Well, I'm just saying, like, take a song like Jungle, for example, and you have an actual, like, story. You can really connect to the emotions that Drake is describing.
For sure.
I feel like here, it just feels a little bit, like, very surface level, and there's no real insight on, like, their lives or the relationships that they're going through in a meaningful way, in my opinion.
Well, you do get that on Die Trying. This was actually one of the better written tracks on this entire album. I do think it's one of the best records. You got, Drake talking about talking to God and how he didn't get a response back at one of his lowest moments, and just maybe saying, like, maybe she was busy and maybe she couldn't come into my life and help me at that point. So I think that was strong as well. Then after that, some cool wordplay on something like Small Town Fame. Putting Charlie up her nose, X on her tongue. She been geeking hard. She done had a brat summer. I found the cool wordplay for an R&B album. Fuck it, we kind of lame. Ball.
I'm not gonna lie.
No, I liked it. I found it cool.
I do want to speak about some of those rapping performances and just his reflections over the beef and the whole situation that he was involved in 2024. Because he does get a bit deep about it. For example, on Small Town Fame, where he raps, "Lost a lot of brothers to this dog-ass game. What am I supposed to do with all that pain? Sleepless nights, drawn-out days, thinking about how wrong I played. Even lost my bitch to the Small Town Fame. I'm a mess right now." So it was interesting to see, like,
him open up about
just open up about, like, how he's actually been feeling about the whole situation and the aftermath of it. And this continues on the outro, Greedy, with the line, "I've been a nice guy. People I've done right by flipped on me, but girl, it's all right." So yeah, some passive aggressive feelings. And then on Give Me a Hug, this was sort of like the biggest talking point.
Yeah,
lyrically.
This was a huge one. So we have the 21 Savage bar. Savage, you're the only guy checking on me when we really in some shit, brothers. So talking about how 21 Savage was probably contacting him and giving him support throughout the beef. I think that was pretty standard for this.
Then you had Drake elimination. And him saying how, like, rappers at Distant pretty much use him for promotion, and also raps, "Fuck a rap beef, I'm trying to get the party lit."
Trying to get the party lit for the bitches.
Yeah, and you know what? What's interesting is that it just feels totally aimless because, there's subliminal disses and jabs throughout this project. Like, I'll get into one after this. And yet, like, the energy is like, fuck a rap beef, but yet it's just contradictory. You're saying fuck a rap beef, but you're still jabbing and taking subliminals. So I just feel like it's a bit contradictory, and it's hard for me to get behind some of this because I don't really know what his intentions are. So it's like, keep a consistent energy with it.
Well, I will say this. Even on Raining in Houston, the hate from this year alone is confusing me, my love. I can't see things getting much smoother, my love. But regardless, though, looking at my sheet here, like, what, you got like maybe like a couple of bars about the beef. Like, it doesn't feel overwhelming for the track list. There are moments and spots, but it is a 21 song, 78-minute track list. Like, I get it. I understand why he did it. And if you are going to attack those type of rapping performances, I get why he put them in. But like you said, like, I sound a bit salty about it. But at the end of the day, like, he brushed it off. That's the way that I feel about it. But I want to talk about some corny lyrics.
Oh, man. I got a whole tally. I got a cheesy bar tally.
You got it? Okay, so listen to this. Okay, let's go on to Glorious. We'll start there for me. You try to act like you're not. You try to act like a fan, but you know that I'm Drizzy. You know who I am. Like Gra, for sure. 10 million views in a day. This guy's a great writer. There's no way that type of shit should be coming out on a track.
I know.
No way. Then after that, Spider-Man Superman. The hook on this song is horribly written. Girl, I wish I could save you, but I can't. That girl took me for Spider-Man. I'm mad. Superman, Spider-Man.
I'll add on. I got plaques like I haven't been brushing my teeth. Exfoliate that guy you with. He a scrub. Or is that your bestie? I'ma ice both of y'all like Gretzky. Another one. I know you got the kids at the house. Pay the nanny double and come roll with the owl. Like, come on, bro. Or another one. Yeah, no drummer. You know I got bands. Or my hand was gripping your bum. Or girls might trip when you show them the tag. The group chat's lit like, bitch, I'm a gag. Like, bro, I'm
Ratchet
sorry.
Happy Birthday type of writing.
Yeah, it's really weak writing, and I think ultimately for that reason, actually, this is the bar I wanted to shout out. This was on, hold on a second, on Gimme a Hug. I found this pretty funny. It was a jab, which, again, I don't like how contradictory the fact of him saying fuck the rap beef, even though he's throwing sublims, but it was a funny sublim where he raps, because if I die, if these guys that become the sole beneficiary, and what the fuck are they going to do with it, had the girls up at 29 on stage twerking with a dictionary. Kind of, referring to Kendrick and how complex his writing could be.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
That was a cool, clever one. But even at that, the Spanish writing on Meet Your Padre.
Oh, my goodness.
I want your phone numero, por favor. I see your body is like Coca-Cola. I want to meet your madre. Pay my respect. I want to meet your madre. Pay my respects to your padre, mi amor. Bonita, bien lo sabe. Si esa forma de mirmare en tus ojos. Text your friends, que pasa, vamos. Bring them to my casa, por favor.
You know what I think we have to do to really, like, get the maximum experience out of this album? We got to go to the fucking booby trappa, bro. I think that's what we got to do. It's the only way.
Apparently, it's actually a lit, like, strip club in Miami. Fuck it, we ball. But overall, for me, the content's just fucking mid.
It's really bad for me.
It's, you go bad?
I go with the bad rating.
I think there are strong writing cuts, though.
It's some of the worst writing I think you can get out of Drake's catalog. And even for P&D, there's really some weak writing all throughout. But let's go into the production.
Yes, sir.
Production was handled by Noel, by P&D himself, by Lil Angel, Kid Masterpiece, Earl on the beat, and quite a few others. It wasn't really like there was an executive producer sort of role. It felt like there were a lot of different producers that made their way into this. And listen, you're getting, for the most part, moody R&B beats with hardcore trap drums and, as melodies, electronic synths or keys. It's cool. I just feel like there's a recipe and a formula for a lot of these beats there's a vocal sample, there's an atmospheric sort of mood, and you're getting these trap style drums. So for me, that kind of became an issue because, already the performances are sleepy. Now you're giving me repetitive sounding production. It didn't really excite the way I wanted it to.
I disagree with you on this because I feel like there's actually a pretty good diversity of production within this album. So, for example, like the beautiful strings on Pimmy's Dilemma, love those. Even the strings on a song like Die Trying, like I really love that. Then after that, you get more of your atmospheric, cold, dark R&B Toronto trap sound on songs like Something About You. The same thing for Mothballs and CN Tower. Mothballs actually has a great beat switch right in the middle of it. Then after that, Crying in Chanel, the beat is crazy at the beginning and then it gets even better towards the end. I love the keys on that track, the sample flip on Nokia. So I think overall, like, I'm not the most impressed with, the production off of it. I definitely don't think it's one of the best, produced Drake albums, but at the same time, like, I'm cool with the beats. There was diversity for me. You got different types of production throughout it. It's obviously going to be more R&B, moody Toronto-based production that you'd find in both of their catalogs and their earlier works. But for the most part, it was cool. I like a lot of the vocal samples throughout the track list as well. I think that was pretty strong. And you do get more high-tempo productions throughout this track list. For example, like on a song, I believe it was, Give Me a Hug. Like, I love the drums on that song. I think they were exhilarating. I think it adds a mood to the track list. It's definitely a picker-upper. So
That's a really well-produced song.
Yeah, it really
I love
is.
the beat switch on there. Even the gospel sample at the end fit really nicely. There's definitely some standouts. Even NOKIA. I think NOKIA might be my favorite production just because it's a change of pace. It's a change in style, and I feel like, to go against what you were saying about the diversity, this is one of the only unique sounding beats on the entire project.
Yes,
and I love the Atlanta bass that you're hearing. I love how the synths really start to shine towards the second half of the song, and it's just like these 2000s dance club vibes that again, it's one of those productions where you're like, this is so new for Drake, and this is what I want. This is, a fresh sound that's gonna excite me as a Drake fan. But apart from that, I mean, something like Celibacy, right? Because a lot of people were praising the beat switches. I feel like it was such an uneventful beat switch just because the mid-tempo sort of like stays the same, and it's like barely noticeable that a beat even switched. And I felt that way for a couple of beats.
But you know what? I like that Celibacy beat switch just because I feel like, I guess to your point, like it does stay mid-tempo throughout it. It's not necessarily exhilarating, but it was a seamless transition. And the way then that Party Next Door comes in for that second half, I felt like it did match the track. But speaking about more like really traditional like R&B cuts off of this album production-wise, the production on Greedy, bro, like that dark, atmospheric, love and moody Toronto sound was at full effect on this. I love the ambient synths on it. Like it really felt close to home for Drake and PND. So I will give its praise where it's due. Even something like Deeper, the 808s on that song are fucking crazy.
Solid beat.
It
really solid beat.
Really surprised me when that came on. That feels like a really old cut that could have fit on the PND first installment, like I said at the beginning of this review. So overall, I think the production's good. I gave it a good rating.
I think even a beat like Crying in Chanel, really don't like the distorted bass line. The drums feel a bit off tempo. That was another one that I didn't fuck with. But shout out to the Lollipop sample on CN Tower that came in at the end. That was really dope to see be brought in a natural way. But beyond the beats, for me, it's even like the mixing of the vocals and just some of the overall mixing and mastering of the project. I feel like you didn't get the warm textures that you got. The beat sounded a bit thin at times, and I didn't think that it was up to par with what I usually come to expect from both their catalogs. I'm gonna give it a mid rating. I thought there were some highlights, but overall, too much of a repetitive, consistent sound, which for 21 songs, that's gonna be a detriment for me.
Well, let's talk about those 74 minutes in the replay value now, because this one's interesting. When we saw that announcement, we were like, "Fuck, dude. This could go really bad."
I knew it. I knew it before the amount of tracks that it was going to be, not the best album. And then, that was confirmation. I'm like, there's no way that they're going to be able to do this for 21 songs.
But regardless, though, let's go through the keeps of this track list. For myself, I have CN Tower. I have Mothballs, Something About You, Crying in Chanel, Deeper, Small Town Fame, Pimmy's Dilemma, Brian Steele, Gimme a Hug, Nokia, Die Trying, Somebody Loves Me, When He's Gone, and Greedy.
So you're going to be bumping the whole album.
Yeah.
You're going to fuck with all 21 songs.
Yeah, I will say this. Like, the replay value could have been a lot better if it was a start-to-finish album. I think, like, if you would have made this 16 to 17 songs, and you would have left off a bunch of filler like Glorious, Me Your Padre, shit like that, it would have been a lot more concise. The track list is too long. Not a start-to-finish album, but at the same time, like, there is that playlist vibe to it where I am getting a lot of songs out of it for me. Like, if I'm keeping 14 out of 21 tracks, for me, like, that's good replay value. Plus, I feel like for myself, since we've done our live album reaction, the other night, the track list has grown on me. There's songs that I want to go back to and I want to listen to again. So I feel like I'm going to be going back and I'm really going to be looking at certain tracks. And also, like, there's certain vibes and places and tempos that you could be playing this type of music in, right? Like, I feel like for our live album reaction, not that it was tough because we've listened to this type of music in that type of setting, but this music is definitely better for like a car setting, for example. Or when I'm chilling with my girl, like, I'm not going to be playing this like just on my ones at certain points, So I don't know. That's the way that I feel about it. I'm really mixed on the replay value, but I am going back to the track list. I'm keeping 14
Yeah,
tracks.
I don't think you're mixed. You're keeping a majority of the album, bro. You're definitely not mixed on that.
Well, at the same time, though, like I do have 7 skips on the project.
Yeah.
A bit more, and I'm not keeping half the album.
So you got a good rating there?
I got a good rating for the replay
Listen,
value.
for myself, I mean, listen, there's so many P&D and Drake songs that I really fuck with. Car setting, hanging with a girl, whatever the case may be. There's music I go to for that. This is not going to be it. This music, it doesn't feel, for lack of a better word, it doesn't feel sexy. It doesn't feel like the vibes are right. It doesn't, again, evoke any real emotion
Yeah,
from
but you
the
can't say that
vocals
when you
I'm
listen to a
getting.
song
And
like
I'm going to be
Greedy,
honest with you.
Nokia.
I am taking songs that I genuinely, at this time, at this
Yeah.
current time, that I see myself wanting to revisit. 2 songs. 2.
Whoa.
I got Nokia and I got Deeper. In terms of like other tracks like Small Town Fame, I like a flow at the beginning, but there's elements of the song that I don't fuck with too much. So that one's made like a maybe. But in terms of songs that I genuinely feel like revisiting, it would be only Deeper and Nokia, making it 2 out of 21 songs that I think stand out in their catalog and are different enough for me to be like, okay, I haven't heard this from them before, or this is really undeniable. I have to listen to this again. So 2 out of 21. And listen, I like R&B music that can create a unique vibe, that has some soul, that has layered performances, fresh melodies, engaging delivery, and for the most part, this album doesn't have any of that.
Well,
So
no, like it's
it's
definitely
bad. Bad rating for the replay value.
I think you explained it well, but I knew that it was gonna be like that for you after like the first listen, and I know what your taste is. So at the end of the day, like you're right. Like if you're gonna be only keeping 2 songs, it's gonna be bad replay value. And I will say this on the overall thoughts. Like I know we are a hip hop channel, but you know at the same time, like I do listen to Giveon, I do listen to Daniel Caesar, I do listen to like a lot of R&B music, and we've covered this so many times before. I've listened extensively to PND's catalog. Frank Ocean, SZA, D'Angelo,
Brent
Sade.
Faiyaz, Bryson Tiller
Yeah,
makes
like
better music that's in this sort of realm, you know? So
so what I mean is like you can't just tell me like, oh, it's a Drake album. You guys are gonna hate on it in other ways. Like, no, I think like they did what they did. It was gonna be a love-centric R&B album dropped on Valentine's Day for that cold Toronto night, and they somewhat delivered on it. That's the way that I feel about it. I think there is replay value to this track list. I was always a fan of the Honestly Nevermind vocals, so going back, like I was like, you know what, they are on par with those vocals. So maybe the more that I listen to it, I will enjoy it, and that's what did happen this weekend. So I'm gonna give it a good rating. I think it's a fair effort. I think that they did a good job on it, and I think that it could have been even better if they would have done better at just fucking keeping songs off of this track list. Like songs like Spider-Man, Superman, get that out of here. You know, songs like Meet Your Padre, no way. You want to drop that collaboration, do it as a single. There's no way that should be on a Drake solo album track list, or should I say a collaboration album. So it could have been much better to me.
a good rating is crazy, bro. That is a crazy take.
Yeah, I called it.
Yeah, listen, to me, this doesn't compare to the majority of their previous collaborations, looking at great songs they made together, like a Recognize, or for example, Over Here, and quite a few others. And maybe if this dropped 10 years ago, it could have been a better album, because I feel like they were both making better R&B music 10 years ago. It just doesn't feel like there was that much effort put into this album. You're getting hooks that are often repetitive and not that infectious for the most part, and the vocals are really horribly mixed to me. And ultimately, you know, getting through this album felt like crawling to the finish line, because a lot of these songs really do drag. The chemistry wasn't convincing for me on this album whatsoever. It didn't feel like a proper collab album, which is what it is. And I'm happy that some people can get a kick out of it, even you, but it's not going to change my opinion. I don't feel like this adds anything positive to their catalogs. I feel like this, to me, is going to go down as up to this point Drake's worst album, and for PND one of his weaker albums, even though PND 4 is on a similar level for me. And yeah, just the fact that PND felt like an afterthought is a big issue for me. And for an album that was supposed to be Drake's so-called redemption album after everything that he had gone through, you would have expected maybe some enthusiastic rap or some soulful, emotionally riveting R&B where it's proven that he's still an elite artist. But instead, you got a sleepy album that's very slow-moving, feels emotionless, and is ultimately bloated. And I'm sorry, but knowing the talent of these guys, this should not have been the final result. We know what they're capable of, and this is the final product after like months of anticipation and hype. It just doesn't feel like it was worked on the way that it should have been. I have it as a mid rating ultimately. But guys, let us know down in the comments, how would you score this album? How did you feel about it? And as we mentioned at the beginning, we do have our album reaction up on Patreon. Check out the link in the pinned comment or in our description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Peace.